Good evening, everyone. My name is Luis Berispedia. I serve as chair of the Historic Districts Commission in Concord. Welcome to the February 23, 2023 meeting of the Town of Concord Historic Districts Commission. The commission will review one new application and two continuances, and at the end, we'll conduct and discuss some other business. We are conducting this meeting online in accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. The public may access this call through both telephone and video conferencing. Members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comments on applications and discussions following the petitioner's presentation. Somebody took over my screen and removed my text.
I'm in the same position.
Oh, and the big screen disappeared for me.
Yeah, you can control it on the biggest screen in a little thing on the center. That's what I did. At any rate, members of the public will have an opportunity to ask questions and provide public comments on applications and discussions following the petitioner's presentation and questions from the commission. To do so, please raise your hand in the participant function of the Zoom meeting platform. If you're calling in and cannot use the platform, you may raise your hand by dialing *9. Our host will mute microphones of those not speaking to preserve bandwidth and may need to turn off video except for the commissioners, the host, and the current applicant. I will call on each commissioner for comments on an application and then open the meeting for public comment. Once there are no more public comments, I will ask for a motion from the commission to continue, to approve with conditions, or to reject. A second, and then conduct a roll call vote. Once the commission has acted on an application, the applicant is free to leave the meeting. I will do a roll call of the members of the commission. Kate Schartner will not be attending. Walton Clay. Walter Clay.
I'm here. I'm sorry that last screen brouhaha unmuted me.
Dennis Fiore. Is Dennis here? He was here.
Was.
Okay, well, let's go. Bill Hewitt will not be attending. Catherine Mast.
Here.
Henry Moss.
Here.
Melinda Shumway will not be attending, and Paul Ware will not be attending, and Tim Whitney.
Here.
Perfect. And is Dennis back?
Don't see him.
Dennis, you may need to unmute if you are there.
No, we don't see him in the. Okay. All right.
Just Luis, one of the screens that I had when things were messed up said that I was viewing Dennis's screen here, so he may be having a problem.
Yeah.
He may be the iPhone.
Okay.
Perhaps.
Let's. Well, he was here before, so let's assume that he's here. This is creating a very interesting problems because. I have him as one of the voting members. So why don't we assume that Dennis is here, and when the time comes to vote, if we have not retrieved him or recuperated him, then we'll change the voting members. The voting members on the applications will be Mr. Fiore, Mrs. Mast, Mr. Moss, Mr. Whitney, and myself. And I may call into Walter Clay if we cannot retrieve Dennis back. So the first new public hearing is the First Parish Unitarian Church to 6 Lexington Road, the American Mile Historic District, to construct an accessible entry addition to the Rye Tavern, Pocket Park, and other associated landscape changes. So who is here for the First Parish? Tom?
I think, Tom, you're going to speak for us, yeah?
Okay, Tom and Peter, familiar faces.
Yes, hello.
Nice
everyone.
to see you all.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. My name is Tom Wilson, and I'm the chair of the Wright Cavern Legacy Trust, which is an independent organization that is leasing the tavern and is one that's spearheading the renewal and redevelopment of the Wright Cavern. I'll mention just a couple of quick things. One is that as of last Monday, the board has approved a schematic design for the new building, that I think you all, once we have an opportunity to share that with you, you'll be as excited as we are, because it creates an opportunity to really bring back a lot of the historic fabric that exists within the building. And a critical part of that is creating a new entrance on Main Street. And that's what tonight's topic is about, that both provides an entree for people to enter the building in a way that can be orderly and provide the kind of experience we're looking for. It also provides for handicap access. That's really quite in part of the entry. So when you, at some point in time, if you're interested, we can share the schematic drawings and all the ideas, and you'll hear more about that a little bit later. Second thing is, probably is on some of you all's mind, is that we are in the final throes, I hope, of our working with the historic historical commission on finalizing the preservation restriction. As you know, those restrictions has really two really important parts. One, it has identified, through the help of Lynn Spencer and her group of the preservation architects, to identify somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 different elements within the building that were going to be preserved throughout our process and highlight through the experience that we're working to develop. It also creates a commitment for public access. The issue that the trustees have is that kind of a commitment for public access will last forever. And despite whatever might happen here tonight or in subsequent meetings or the future or funding or whatever, so the trustees have some concerns about the endurance of the public access issues in terms of if we're not as successful as we hope to be. But I think we're coming to a solution. We've met over with the CHC on several meetings. I think they understand our concerns. We clearly understand their interests. So I think we're coming very close to it. And Melissa Sapfield indicated to us in an earlier meeting this week that they are finalizing some modifications to our proposal. So I'm really optimistic that we're going to be able to get to that. Both parties, all parties, really want to get that resolved and to have a really strong preservation restriction in place that will really protect that building for the future. So third thing is really tonight's session, and I'm going to turn it over to Peter Nobley, who's our vice chair and is an architect and known by some of you, I assume, and he'll introduce our team of experts that's been working with us. Peter, it's all yours.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, Luis, and everybody. It's nice to see you all again. So I really don't want to linger here. I think I just want to say I'm going to introduce our design team, but I've been a member of First Parish for 23 years and have experienced the Wright Tavern in any number of ways, from teaching religious education classes there to receiving pastoral counseling from ministers when there were offices on the first floor, to meeting with architects, and the Shattuck Architects was on that second floor of the building for many years, and they will likely come back. So I really see the Wright Tavern as kind of a living treasure that we are privileged enough as First Parish to steward. So this project really, to me, is a next step in proper stewardship of this building to ensure that it largely remains intact, or what remains of it, I should say, because it's been modified so many times over the years. And I just wanted to introduce our design team, who I think are doing an exemplary job of both analyzing and assessing and working with the existing fabric in a way that really honors the structure. And it's the Spencer Preservation Group, which is, I think, obviously named after Lynn Spencer, who's one of the principals, but Lynn and Doug Manley are partners. Doug is an architect and has been doing this kind of work for, I don't know, more than 30 years, Doug, 35 years. Mm. And Megan Rodenheiser is their associate and will be running the show tonight. So I think what I would ask is if you could I think, Megan, are you going to run the slide show?
I am.
would it be okay to turn the screen over to Megan, please? Megan will run through the slideshow, and then I'll turn it over to Lynn and Doug to kind of run the presentation. So without further ado, there you go.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I appreciate this. It's great to see everyone tonight. I have to say, at the beginning of this meeting, I was reminded of a little sort of diagram that was sent around to my office the other day that likened today's Zoom meetings to the seances of the late 19th century. Dennis, are you in there? Peter, are you in there? So I'm glad to see Dennis has been able to join us. As Peter and Tom have introduced, the Wright Tavern is truly a legacy building, and we are privileged to work on it. We began our work with the Wright Legacy Trust earlier this year, or earlier in 2022, when we were asked to come in as a team to embark on the adaptation of this building to serve as its next iteration, the Center for the Exploration and Renewal of Democracy. That phrase sort of really rings with us because obviously this building and Concord is associated with important events in the beginning of the history of this country. This is a hardworking building. We were immediately involved in working with the trust and our consultants, which include a structural engineer, materials consultants, and historians, to really look at what the immediate need was to develop these standards for preservation restriction. And several of you on this committee and other committees have heard the details of what's in that preservation restriction. Let me say at the onset that at the present, all exterior elevations of this building are included for protection under this restriction, this proposed restriction. This means that what we are actually proposing tonight will involve an approval not only by the Historic District Commission, but the Historical Commission and the Board of Selectmen under the terms of that restriction. That saying, we believe that what we're planning is in keeping with the, if you will, the legacy, the story of this building as it has evolved over time. And we're going to start in the beginning of this presentation with a look at some of those images. This building sort of stood on this place since 1747. And as you see in the images below and in the next page, Megan, could we go next? It's had a storied history. Obviously, you know, the eve of the morning of the battle at the Old North Bridge was depicted here in the 1775 Doolittle drawing, you know, a dramatic presentation of the Wright Tavern. You know, a year before, it had been linked to the provincial Congress when it was meeting at the First Parish. You know, we can see that over time, this building has served as both a bakery, a residence, an inn, the offices for commercial purposes, even a shop at one point for the sale of Shaker furniture. So what's the story here? You know, the building is a continually evolving building, which has been responsive to changing needs and adaptations while protecting the essential form and massing of the structure as well as its openings. In the next image, we look at where we are today. Concord has dramatically changed, while the Wright Tavern has been an anchor in that location. We're aware that Monument Square is visited by thousands, hundreds of thousands of people a year. We see the gateway to Main Street and the intersection with Walden Street. We see a rotary that we understand is under, you know, that we understand that traffic and circulation are under study right now with the town through its Department of Public Works. But there, outlined in red, is the subject of tonight's presentation, the Wright Tavern and its and its site. So what about that site? In 1839, we see a somewhat, what seems to be a pretty idealized view. There's the Wright Tavern located in front of that version of the first parish. And there's the hotel and inn at the side, the townhouse, the square, even the sort of initial Liberty pole that was in place. Today, what do we have? We have across the street a small park, which was established several years ago through the Veterans of Foreign Wars. We have, the sort of, if you will, the combination of civic and residential architecture. And looking down Main Street, we move on to the commercial architecture. So in its essence, this site reflects the sort of changing times of the town of Concord. So what is our project? Our project today seeks to preserve this building, but turn it over, let it turn the page to its next chapter. And in that chapter, we have a building that if the 4 square portion of this building is that original Wright Tavern. We see that we have an L that is has been truncated over time because of changes in sidewalks and the road widening. And we also see adaptations to that L in the form of the sort of, if you will, the little shed addition, which houses a staircase and a dormer that enabled the second floor to be more accessible, along with the 1926 sunroom. Again, a large, a part of the story of evolution for changing needs. At that time, the Wright Tavern was functioning as an inn, and that sunroom was the tea room and restaurant portion of it. Our focus, as Tom mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, is to create an entrance that is inviting to the public, that offers the ability to get full accessibility, as well as actually sort of linking the tavern to Monument Square and, if you will, the frontispiece. We now have in this building 3 different entrances. The historic entrances will be maintained, but this 3rd entrance is one that we would like to adapt. And with that, we'll say, well, why are we going to adapt it? So, and this is just an image from, we think about what year was it, Doug? 1962. And we judge that in part by the car outside. But you can see again that little single-story entrance, Megan, can you show that? That little single-story I guess I will call it an entrance. That sort of glorifies it a little bit, but that had existed at that time. We are not exactly sure when it was introduced, but we think it is, from its construction, is probably a mid-20th century addition. So let's go on to, well, what are we going to do about this? There's the Wright Tavern, and what's happening next? And with this, I'd like to sort of turn this over to Doug Manley, who will take us through these, if you will, the kind of proposed changes, and then we'll look at how those appear in rendered form.
We're going to show you at first a series of the existing plans, and then show the impact area that we're looking to provide the new entry addition to. So this is the existing floor plan. This is that little appendage that Lynn just spoke about. That's a way into the building. Over on the right-hand side, you'll see what passes as today's accessible entry, a narrow corridor, a hallway that's so narrow and doors so narrow that it requires an auto operator to meet the requirements of the code, but something we hope to improve upon. Next, please, Megan. looking at an elevation view of that appendage that we keep going back to in the dotted area, area that we're proposing to do most of our changing to. This is the view from Main Street, looking a straight on view of that. And Megan, next. So we saw this before, this 1839 view, this etching, a very romantic view of looking across the Monument Square with the First Parish Church in the background. But we turn to this because you'll still note that there's appendages of different types at the very front of on the Main Street elevation. So we're hoping to move forward with what's been a tradition on this building for some time. Next, Megan. And this is celebrated by this three-dimensional model that you see in the library in Concord. Again, that same romanticized view from the Monument Square, and quite evident the little kind of side bags that are onto the front of the building on Main Street.
Yeah, I guess, Doug, the term that we had been using before is one I'll pull out now. We call these accretions. And that's what I was trying to sort of think. Well, what do I really want to call this appendage? Well, we could call this an accretion.
Yeah. And next, Megan. So the question comes, as Lynn referred to, the Center for the Exploration and Renewal of American Democracy. So probably wondering, well, what is that about? What's intended to go on in that building? So most of its activities were going to focus on being on the first floor, the parts of the building that are generally open to the public. And we've been working with a maze design to go through and look at how each of the rooms are used. But it's a progression. If you see the new entrance, that's where we're going to focus our attention tonight. We're hoping that the entrance focuses now on Main Street and becomes the main and accessible entry to the building, as opposed to that narrow corridor that we highlighted in the plan view. But you'll be entering, and we'll spend more time of that process as further on in the presentation, how it interacts with the site. Megan, the next slide, please. So what we're proposing to move forward with is this addition, again, the dotted area, focusing there, whereby you would enter a welcoming center entry to the space off of Main Street. From there, have a chance to either go up the stairs to the first floor or go down the stairs to the former kitchen of the building, which we hope to develop further as kitchen facility for the proposed activities of the building. And in the upper right corner of our highlight box is an accessible lift, which will take people from this on-grade lobby up to the first floor or down to the basement level. And this is that basement level. Indicates what I was speaking about, the room that has a fireplace now, but was historically a kitchen, and we hope to return to. It's probably a catering kitchen to the events that will happen on the first floor. Next, please, Megan. So what does it look like? This is the proposed south elevation. You see on the kind of the right hand of the four square, the 1924 porch addition Lynn spoke about, and this is our new addition, kind of with a glass opening, welcoming onto the Main Street park space. Next one, Megan. And then again, this is the view here, which is sort of evocative of going back to the etching and the 3D model, the kind of projected gable piece that appeared on those pieces of the building. And next, please, Megan. So as a reminder, this is the view today. This will be the approach to from the main entry, or to the main entry. And this is the proposed it's a paved foreground, sort of a two-part transition off of Main Street. I'll talk a little further, Lynn will, on the site plan proposal, but I want to focus now on what the buildings changes are. This is the new entry piece coming in on grade at this level. And as you saw in the plan, you have the option of going up a stair to the first floor or an accessible lift to the first floor at this level. And Megan, next. We started to look into what's happening at nighttime on the site and in the vicinity. Did a kind of survey, photographic survey of where the lighting is now. The upper left-hand photograph is kind of that same scene that we just viewed in the rendering. And next, please, Megan, is we start to look at what we'll do lighting-wise, and what this means is we see this as kind of an entry lantern, welcoming both at nighttime and in the daytime as a way to enter the building, and proposing saying staying with the materials that are used with a little bit different massing and proportions of the glazing. Next, Megan.
Okay, great. So this is the site as we have it today. And you'll notice that there are large maple trees, as well as a pathway that leads from Main Street to the church and its parking area. What we're proposing is a two-part intervention in the landscape. The first part of it would be the immediate area to the proposed addition, which is labeled as a patio. I tend to think of it as an entry courtyard, but it is a way that people would be able to sort of gather to enjoy outdoor space before they enter the building for their tours. And by the way, the building's purposes will be a combination, the tavern's purposes will be a combination of, yes, the exhibit experiences on the first floor, which are being designed by Amaze Design in collaboration with an advisory group, which the Legacy Trust has assembled. But there will also be times when evening meetings or daytime meetings are taking place in the large 1924 or 26 sunroom. So there'll be opportunities for both learning experiences as well as social experiences at various levels on that first floor. But also on the outside of the building, there's an opportunity for people to gather, to relax, to enjoy, and to learn something as they're in that experience. So here we have a close-up of some of the materials that we're proposing for the entry courtyard patio. The second part of that landscape concept is what we're labeling as a pocket park. Think of it, if you will, as the sort of part of the gateway experience to Main Street and Monument Square, sort of a mirror, if you will, to the park across the street, utilizing similar materials. Red brick in-ground paving, granite for a seating wall. And those existing maple trees that you saw in the rendering earlier are carefully preserved. The wayside pulpit, which is used by the first church to convey messages, philosophical and spiritual messages, will be retained but relocated. Megan, can you just show where that's going to be?
Yep.
So elements that are known and familiar will stay, but new elements are being introduced in terms of both the entry courtyard area as well as the pocket park. And those are opportunities to introduce interpretive elements. So this rendering shows the idea, for instance, of a map, etched in granite as a way of understanding how this portion of Concord had existed at one time and could evolve. You see a wayside interpretive panel is a place to tell more about the story of this place, as well as simply allowing people to relax and enjoy their experience, both outside the tavern and as they approach perhaps their tour experience or learning experience. So with that, I will say that we understand this is the beginning of a dialogue with the Historic District Commission. We understand there will be many questions and many thoughts shared, and we certainly welcome that opportunity to discuss all of this further with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Thanks for this excellent presentation. So I'm going to go alphabetically among the members of the commission, and I will start with Walter Clay to make comments.
So first off, I'm delighted that there aren't trees being lost in the process. I was afraid from when it first flashed that was the case. So congratulations there. A very minor thing, a couple of the views of the seating wall. I was wondering if it might make more sense to break that up just a little bit for, I don't know if it would help access or make it a little less monolithic from the street. Sort of visually, that's the first thing you see, and I have to get past that to look. Then beyond that, as I've looked through the proposal, even in greater depth today, and then seeing this evening, I think it's pretty wonderful. I am looking at the glass, at the fenestration in the addition, and wondering if perhaps it is a little bit too shy. And what would happen if you opened up all of that wall space to glass? It might soften, it seems almost counterintuitive, but it might soften the impact of that mass on the building, make it even more transparent and even perhaps more welcoming. That would be my question to you. Is that something that was considered?
Well, I have to say that's a wonderful thing to hear, Walter. Thank you.
Yeah, it looks almost like you're pulling a punch.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah.
We don't feel that way.
We were perhaps a bit timid in moving forward on that. Yes.
Well,
We're
it
cautious.
has that impression to me.
Yeah, we are cautious about it. I mean, by the way, one of the things that you're seeing is in the kind of, if you will, the design on the glass is the idea that the glass could contain part of an interpretive story. There, we actually used a map etched onto the glass as a way of, saying, hey, there's more than just, a glass wall here. But it is possible to consider perhaps more glass.
Well, especially from the street view to that end panel. It just looks, to me, it looks with a smile, as it looks timid and as if it could be expanded, and more would actually read as less in a way, to me.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Dennis.
Luis, just a clarification, and that is that I sit on a committee for this project. So, and I'm not a voting member, but maybe I should refrain from saying anything. I'll take your ruling on that. Okay.
Well, I guess that you can participate as a member of the public. and that being the case, what I will do is that I will appoint Walter Clay as a voting member and remove you as a voting member, because I had designed place you as a voting member beforehand.
Great. With that, I will say that I've spent a lot of time looking at this design, and I really like it. I particularly like the idea that it reflects the park on the other side, and I think they've done a good job of making that happen. And that sort of forms a gateway coming into the community. This also seems to reflect what's going to go on down the street, and we're going to talk about that later tonight, but I think the work that's going on at the intersection of Walden and Main Street sort of forms a three-part with this. I think has some of the same features, and I know they've been considering granite benches down there. I sort of like Walter's idea of breaking up that wall. it may just look monolithic in this particular image, but overall, I find it a very pleasing plan, and I think it really enhances this area. If you take a close look at it today, I wouldn't say it's scruffy, but the road has changed elevations over time. I think it's left this high and dry in some ways, and I think this consolidates it, and I think it's a great improvement to that whole area.
Thank you, Dennis. Then I will ask Bill Hewitt. No, he's not here, right? Sorry, I'm wrong in my list. The next one would be Catherine.
So I agree with my fellow commissioners. I think overall this is an excellent project. I've been sort of ruminating on my own impressions of the Wright Tavern, and I do believe this is going to create a much more welcoming presence for the tavern. I think now it's in a way it's not an intimidating building by any means, but on the other hand, I think it's a little bit confusing as a visitor, especially if you're not familiar with the building, to sort of understand where one would enter and what its purpose really is at this point. So I think the transformation of the entrance is really well done. I mean, it's really maintaining the integrity of the whole structure very, very purely, while just taking this one volumetric structural element to create the entry point, which I think is again very well done. I'm torn about the glass. I now that I recognize the etching of the map, I actually like this concept a lot better. I think that's very interesting and a really nice way to sort of impose the history of this structure, in a way that's also very welcoming and interesting to anyone visiting. So I like that very much. I mean, it might be interesting to see how it would look with even more glass integrated into that structure. The only thing I wonder is maybe echoing some of the glazing work and the mullions and the muttons of the existing historic windows, and maybe if it's even on just the short end of the new structure in a grid, in a like a large scale grid. But as far as the seating wall, also I do agree. I think breaking it up in sort of a rhythmic way might be a really nice way to make it a little less kind of rigid, I guess, visually, and maybe introducing some plantings between maybe 3 sections, for example, 3 shorter sections of that seating wall might be a nice way, again, to just break it up and create some nice visual rhythm and fluidity there. But otherwise, I think the programming is obviously very thoughtful, and I think it's a great project.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Henry.
Thank you, Luis. I agree that overall, this is a very beneficial approach to this strange corner in our town. The old images that showed the earlier expansion of the roof of the L over the accretions was helpful to me. I found it difficult to imagine that the L hadn't had a much more independent presence for a long time. But given those, I think it makes sense to allow that roof to continue downward. And I also think that this particular image is suggestive of what I have to think of as a lot of continuity in the approach between the current design and what was there before.
Mhm.
If we could go back to the rendering that you had up just prior to this, Megan. Yeah. Before we get to landscape, it is intriguing to me that there's so much visible foundation for the Wright Tavern. And it makes me wonder how that in the 1920s related to the elevations of the landscape surrounding it. No matter what that was, I think that it's important that the new addition not just slam straight into the ground. And if you visualize the snow that we've experienced today with its mounds of slush and so forth, it suggests that having such a low sill that just embeds itself in the lawn as it approaches the Lexington Road component, that could become a little bit more sophisticated. For example, that could be granite. And then begin the glazing from there. Speaking of granite, I think there are some important opportunities in breaking the length of that wall. And one of those opportunities is if the granite is as substantial as this rendering suggests, then cutting portions of it at maybe 3-foot intervals would allow a couple things. It would allow people to sit facing one another. It would allow people to go through the wall and sit on the granite facing southwest sun. So there are a number of, I think, potential enrichments that could come from that. Coming back to Walter Clay's point about trees, I do think that the large triangular area between the fence and the proposed bench could accept another deciduous tree. And the rendering is helpful in that it points out that you can see a lot under deciduous trees if they're limbed up. So there's no reason that you couldn't have something as substantial as an elm in there to allow some shade without it obscuring what you're doing for the pocket park. So that's an additional tree. We've removed an enormous, wonderful conifer that currently blocks the view of the 1920s tea room. Yeah. When it comes to the glazing, I think the conversation is interesting and frankly somewhat difficult. The current scale of the glazing panels somehow makes them too large, I think. Although I think it's quite right to have those large mullions. These compete with the windows of the existing house in this rendering. Whether it would do that in reality, I think is a hard thing to predict. I understand that the massing of the addition is very deferential to the end of the tea room, and the removal of the conifer makes the end of the tea room visible really for the first time. And that's a trade that could be debated, but I think it is not a bad trade at this stage. What I do wonder is how the new stair and the service entrance to the basement, whether those need as much glazing associated with them as is shown here. I think there could be less glass, and it would in a way suggest more of a lantern, more transparency if it were located in relation to the corner and the entrance door. Crudely, I think there are too many panels of glass here. Whether they could be subdivided differently is a design discussion that I won't enter at this stage. So overall, I think this is a very strong proposal. It's very consistent with what has been at this site in the past. It'll bring new life to this part of Concord. And I think it deserves refinement, but not blockage. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you very much, Henry. Timothy, Mr. Whitney, Architect Whitney.
Thank you. So yeah, I think this is I just want to say it's a very, very clear, well done presentation. So very easy to follow. And I share other comments. So I'm going to be reiterating some previous comments. I think the massing looks great. You know, there's obviously precedent. There's a quirkiness to these accretions, I think that was the word. And the quirkiness sort of continues in what you're doing. And there's a harkening back to what's been there. You're cleaning up a tough side of the building, all, in my mind, good moves. I think fundamentally, which caught my eye as soon as I looked at the renderings was, and it's been mentioned before, is the glass. There's something storefronty and unbold about it. And I think there was a comment about possibly even having more glass, but it's for all the moves, it's a very tame, in my mind, kind of uninteresting facade of glass that wraps around the corner. And what could be done more to that, either headed more towards the modern, more glassy, not that we're here to present solutions, but, you know, taking a position one way or the other, it seems to be, in my mind, right in the middle and looks a bit storefronty and uninteresting to an extraordinary building, an extraordinary effort that you're going through. So I don't know what the solution is, but it's there's something in my mind, a missed opportunity for what that corner of glass can be. So that's my architectural comment. Otherwise, I think the massing is very simple and very clean and looks appropriate. You know, it just looks right. I agree with the comments on the granite wall. It's enormously long, and it just seems like if there's some break where you could step it or put it into 3 pieces, something to ease that bar. And then the third, if we could go to the site plan, your rendered site plan. I just have a couple of comments on the site plan.
Absolutely. Do you want the full one or the one that just focuses on the patio in the park?
Patio on the park is fine, thanks. Yeah, that's good right there. So, so the other gut reaction I had about these patio and pocket parks is they seem eminently sensible to me as to where they occur, but I wonder about the size of them. And I know they're very small and intimate is great. I actually wonder whether they should be more intimate and more separate, so the pocket park has its own identity that doesn't so quickly bleed into the patio that's part of the entrance to the Wright Tavern. It's a question I have. I'm not sure I know the answer, and I will be curious to see what Lee says, but I just wonder about cafe tables and expanding the scale of that patio relative to what that intimate entrance might want to be. Should it be this much paving and the small amount of greenery that's there? It's a question. And I think intimacy on the patio and intimacy in the pocket park, so it's really as tight space as you can make. So they're not huge gathering spaces, unless there's some function that you haven't explained where of the use of those patio. I think they would actually be better if they were more distinct and more separate rather than kind of bleeding together. So that's a comment, and but otherwise I commend all your work. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tim. I will try to keep my comments as short as possible. I have some concerns about the project, and these are based on the fact that one of the most important responsibilities that we have collectively is to keep the Wright Tavern as a source of historic references. Just keep that over there because that's the focus of my attention. So I believe that it is important that the Wright Tavern remains more or less the way that it was when important events happened there, which is essentially what happened in 1775. So once we work from that perspective, then everything that needs to be added needs to be very respectful of that legacy or that reference, because from my point of view, that is the essential task that we have as a historic districts commission, which is to keep the historic references. I want somebody to go there and imagine the British troops camped there, and then the Minutemen camped there, and the Provisional Congress, etc. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. And then from an structural standpoint, how can that be done? Well, we have before us an outstanding, extremely competent architectural design project. It provides two significant elements. One element, which is a structural element that is incorporated into the tavern itself, which allows for entrances and for spaces and for the distribution of passages and pathways, etc. And then we have a second element that it's a place of inspiration, which is consistent with the Center for the Preservation and Exploration of Democracy and so forth. But I don't see them as a single unit. I don't see one dependent or related to the other. I see those two elements as being entirely different. I think that we have a park that has a patio and that should be able to supply a number of historic references on its own, just by virtue of the works of art that you have put there, the passage of the troops and so forth, etc., etc. But that element should be separate from the rest of the tavern. Then you will say, well, what is wrong then with the other structure? I think that the other structure with the glass panels and so forth is just a competent addition that was never meant to be there, and that is not really part of the tavern. No matter how we can look at it, we will never expect to have a whole set of glass panels as part of the Rye Tavern. You see, that will never be able to function as anything that can work as a historic reference. So the question is, how can that be fixed? Because there's no question that structure is almost required. It's necessary. So my approach to a situation like this is that we should not be trying to make the structure to be part of the tavern. We should make the structure to be entirely different from the tavern. And this is the typical setting where I think that a very bold architect would say something like, well, let's do exactly the same structure, but let's make it out of glass. So any person that comes around will realize that this is not meant to be part of the Rye Tavern, that this is a little bump that was probably built in 1960, which doesn't really belong there. But this is a structure that it's crucial, that we need to have, but we're going to make that structure to be a reference to a number of other sources of history. One of them is to say, well, that time passes, you see, and we are no longer in 1775. We'll be celebrating the 250th anniversary of all those events. So it's important that we give recognition to that important event by saying this is part of the Rye Tavern, but this is not what was there before, but it's respectful of the Rye Tavern in the sense that it provides essential components of modern life, like entries and distribution of traffic and things of that sort. So that's the concern that I have. I think that the project as it stands, although architecturally could not be better. See, I think that it's a little ambiguous. See, I think that there's a little bit of a mixed message, or a message that is trying to present something that it really is not. Because this is not an old structure. This is not anything that could have been there at any time before now. This is a modern building that it's being made to look like if it was part of the Wright Tavern. So my suggestion or my point is that let's acknowledge that difference and let's allow the visitors to realize that they are two separate things, but that one is complementing the other by giving homage to the original structure, but recognizing that there are certain things that need to advance. So that's my comment. I'm going to ask for public comments, and I see a large number of people, so I hope that there are many. So are there any public comments? Nancy Nelson raised her hand. Welcome, Nancy. I think you are muted.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, always. I defer to, I'm a member of the Historical Commission. I defer to our chair, who's also here tonight, if she would like, if she didn't get her hand up fast enough. And there I see her.
There she is. You are muted.
I'm unmuted now. So
now you're unmuted.
Well, I mean, it's an excellent presentation, which I would not expect anything less because these are very highly professional folks that are working on this. And I'd say if it were some other building in some other place, it might seem appropriate. But to me, and as chair of the Historical Commission, our obligation is this building. It is an historical artifact in this town of not only local, but national importance. And this structure seems totally out of place to me, even as kind of beautifully as they've placed it. I have all kinds of problems with it. I still have problems with how this, how the whole operation is going to function, how the money is going to be made, how tickets are going to be paid. I just have a lot of questions, but first and foremost, I just do not see that this is an appropriate way to address this building. I would direct the folks to the Secretary of Standards. This is about rehabilitation. This is a distraction from the historic artifact, which is the Wright Tavern. I know Nancy has a lot of opinions. I realize what you're trying to do is to make a way for people to get into the building without perhaps sacrificing the other entryway with the very narrow hallway. But this appendage just seems to me very inappropriate.
Thank you very much, Melissa. Are there any other public comments?
Well, me.
Nancy.
I didn't give up everything.
I thought that you were yielding to the chair.
No, I wasn't yielding.
To the chair of the Historic Commission, I mean.
I would just like to say, I have a long history with the National Park Service and know an awful lot about historic buildings and how to respect them and treat them, interpret them. I thank Luis for his incredibly articulate statement and agree with very, very much of what he said, and also agree with my chair. This is a very troublesome plan. We talk most about how a new park works and looks, and it's all very good, and the building itself is great, but it covers up a lot of the evolved history of the Wright Tavern. And it at the very least, it is covering up or removing and altering 3 windows of the basic structure at the tavern. And I think not enough attention has been paid to the Secretary of the Department of Interior Standards for how this has evolved. And I hope people on the HDC will go back and look at those very carefully, because adherence to those standards is something that is a requirement for future funding from the Community Preservation Fund. I sit also on the Community Preservation Committee, and we are responsible for ensuring that any work that is funded with those funds meets the Secretary of the Interior standards. There are also standards that the Secretary of the Interior has for historic landscapes. Some of this development, it overlays or digs up the location where a stable and a carriage house used to be. I don't think I've heard one word about archaeology. And so I would encourage maybe, I would definitely encourage, not maybe, that a more simple and respectful approach to the building itself be considered. The idea, I don't know if I like Louise's idea about an all glass separate building, but at least it doesn't pretend to give the idea that that building is part of the National Historical Landmark. A National Historic Landmark. I don't think I ever heard that tonight either. So those are my preliminary thoughts, and they need to be better organized. I'm sorry, we're also looking at interior plans and structural plans. It's a little overwhelming. My last concern is that 3 different committees on town are looking at 3 different segregated aspects of this project. And I think that's in the end going to be dysfunctional and disservice to the Wright Tavern and the history of the town.
Thank you, Nancy. Nick Pappas.
Yes, hi.
Comments.
I've lived in town 50 years and have considered this building to be a historic red wooden monolith that I had no interest in entering. And I think it's always put me off. I've known it's historic. But there's something about the way it sits there and all of its red wood that is not inviting. If the purpose is to bring people in for programs and activities, then the park is a great idea. Personal taste, I think the glass looks like somebody's patio sliding doors to me and just seems inappropriate. But I think the fundamental question is, and I don't know, what's the programming, and are we really trying to get people into the building? And I think Luis's comment reminded me of I.M. Pei working at the Louvre and developing something very different. It's been very popular. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Are there any other public comments? I don't see any hands raised. Well, in the absence of any public comments, then I would say that it is crucial that we organize for a site visit. So we could have that site visit the day of our next meeting, which Ann Clifford may correct me, but I believe that it's on the 3rd, on the 2nd of March. Is that correct, Anne?
Let's see. No, it's not until the 21st of March.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, our next meeting is going to be on the 21st of March. So that date, we would have a site visit at the Wright Tavern. I hope that will be agreeable with the applicant.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. And I will then need a motion from the commission to continue the application and for the site visit on March 23.
First.
21.
21. It's a Tuesday, actually.
It's okay. They're trying to make my life difficult. March 21st, a Tuesday. Perfect. Okay. Is there a motion? Catherine, you want to make a motion?
Or I move to to make a continuance for the application for the Wright Tavern with a site visit on the date of, is it in fact the 21st of March?
Yes, it is.
To review the application with a site visit prior to the meeting of that evening.
Second?
I second the motion.
Okay, so I'll go around to the voting members, which I removed Dennis and I added Walter. So Walter.
Aye.
Catherine.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Tim.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So we'll see you on March 21st and 8 o'clock. And thanks very much for this excellent presentation. And I think this is going to be a very interesting process.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you all as well. That's great. Thank you.
All right, so we're gonna now go to the continued public hearings. The first one is David Levy, 19 Main Street, to install new signage. Is Mr. Levy here? Do we know if they were not going to come, Anne, or?
I haven't heard either way. They did send some material, and it looks as if they only changed the color, nothing else. But I can put that up if you like.
Well, we have discussed about the color, but we also discussed about the material that we're going to use and about the corners. If I remember well, there were a number of additional.
Hello. Hello, it's Bill Crosby. Hi, it's Bill Crosby. I'm under Moji, I think.
You're under Mojia, and you are representing 19 Main Street.
Yes, it's really well. Just from the last week or 2 weeks ago. Yes, sorry.
Perfect. Sorry, we didn't know where you were.
Yes, my new nickname. Sorry.
Okay. Could you summarize very quickly what has changed from this project, and
yes,
and is there any material in the website, Anne? Yes.
So last week we had asked, or 2 weeks ago we asked for painted letters, and there was a few comments that the design was too stark, and the color red was very bright red. So we had suggested last week we would go to raised and carved letters. And then we've picked up Benjamin Moore Historic Heritage Red, HC 181, as a darker, not quite so bright poppy red for the background. And so the stretch letters for the flat wall sign and both sides of the blade sign would be raised, and then the Concord letters would be carved in. And then the blank would just be the wood blank with the 1.5 inch thick wood blank with just a softening of the corners, just a slight sanding, so a softer edge on the corners. And I think that's what everybody was asking about, where there was some comments on vinyl letters or painted letters, and so we had kind of agreed last week in the meeting that we would do a raised letter on the left and a carved letter on the front for everything, and tone down the red color. That was one of the comments from a couple of weeks ago.
Okay, well, thanks very much. I will ask the commissioners for comments. I'm going to start with Walter.
It sounds like what was asked for has been honored. It's hard to argue then.
Thank you so much. Very quick. Dennis.
I have to say I'm amused the juxtaposition between these two discussions. We suggested, or some suggested, that the building be more contemporary in the Wright Tavern. When it comes to contemporary sign, we want ye olde in just down the street. So I guess consistency is not one of our things. I didn't have any problem with it the first time around, and I think it looks fine.
Thank you, Dennis. Catherine.
I did have some questions the first time around. Again, back to sort of the stark nature of the way the signage was reading, and particularly with the very bright red against the white. So I actually think, although subtle, the changes made to the deeper, softer red are significant. So I think it's going to be actually quite a significant improvement. So I think it's much better.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Henry.
I think it's a good sign.
The brief prize of the evening award has been awarded. Timothy.
Okay. I'm sorry, the person presenting it, who is that?
Yeah, Bill Crosby.
Okay, Bill, can you just describe it doesn't say on what we were given how the letters are being treated. It just says painted letters. So
yeah, that's in the original meeting. That's what we had, and then so we discussed it when we were away, and then so the stretch letters would be raised letters, which would just pin off slightly off the front, and then the Concord portion of the sign would be carved into the actual board.
And so how much are the stretch letters raised, pinned off the white PVC?
It's just a 1/2-inch letter that would be cut out. We actually cut the letters out of corian and then sand them smooth and then paint them in the same color we would have done if it was a painted sign. And then they're pinned off about 1/8 of an inch. So it just creates a little bit of a shadow there, shows that they're raised letters, but you don't see the studs. So it's just an 1/8 inch floating off the face of the panel.
Okay, and then on the Concord red part of it,
yep,
is that carved with rounded, crisp? How is it carved?
It would just be V carved, like it was hand carved and then sanded slightly smooth, but the edges are still fairly crisp. As you would if you did a carved sign, they would be finished like that.
And what were you doing to the edge of the actual panels again? You said something.
I think part of it is we always sand, we always soften the edge on all the signs that we do, slightly anyway. And then so we could put a cove or a 45 edge on it, but we were just going to sand it, so basically like you're sanding a piece of wood with 220 sandpaper and then priming it and painting it. And it just makes it look more like not that it looks aged or anything, but it's not like a sharp edge.
Right. And sorry, and back to the Concord letters, how deep are you carving those?
Well, at that size, we used about a 90 bit, which probably would go in about 1/2 inch, but it would be typical of, and most letters that it would be hand carved with a chisel. It matches that.
Okay, so the stretch letters essentially stick a 1/2 inch out and the Concord letters stick a 1/2 inch in on a rough.
Yeah, the Concord letters won't appear to be that much in, but they'll have that V carve, so it'll create a couple of different reds in where it V carves, just like you would see in gold leaf.
Okay, and the last, I think that all sounds good because there's going to be some contrast to essentially as a modern sign, which.
Yeah.
The other concern is you've got a very simple sort of Z-clip sign hanger off, I think clapboards, right? That's a clapboard facade, wood clapboards.
Yeah, it's clapboard. We use a French cleat a lot, and the French cleat is big enough so it goes flat against the two leading edges of at least passes two edges of the clapboard, so there's no angle to it. It's just a. And
so the back of the sign is how far off the clapboards?
It would come out about a 1/4 inch, pinned off by the time once it drops down onto the French cleat, so it's not touching the clapboards. Like if we screwed it onto the clapboards, it floats just slightly.
Right. I think just my comment is I think the more it floats free of that clapboard wall and doesn't look like it's just clamped to it.
Yes.
It'll look better.
Yes.
So if you could crease that a little bit, a 1/2 inch or something where it's floating.
Yeah.
Floating as a sign, and because clapboards are just kind of a bad backing for signs.
Yeah, I rarely jam a board into the flat anyway. So if we were just going to screw it in, I would put spacers in it anyway. But it's a little easier with a French cleat where it's just it starts off flat.
Okay, thank you. I have no other comments.
Thank you, Tim. I really have no objections to this project, so I'm going to ask for public comments about 19 Main Street. Okay, if there are no public comments, I will ask for a motion from the commission.
Luis,
Yes.
I just wanted to mention.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I thought it was a mistake.
I just watched your last meeting, and another issue you all had was the stark white. And I think Bill had mentioned that he would tone it down, maybe a couple of shades.
Yep.
To gray.
Yeah,
I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, it's not a gray, but it's a white, and it's called one coat white, which is a white that's a Benjamin Moore color, and it's got just a drop. They call it one coat white because they actually add a couple of drops of black into it, so it's a white, but it's a deader white than the brightest white that they have. So it's like it's the closest without adding any color to it or any tint to it or any blue or pink to it, you know, or cream. It matches the back of the building, but it's a half a click darker than the building itself, even though the building's kind of faded. So it's not Benjamin Moore's whitest white, and then they call it one coat white because it actually has a little bit of black in it.
Okay, well, thanks very much for the clarification. So if there are no other comments after this explanation, then I will ask for a motion from the commission.
I move to approve the application for new signage at 19 Main Street for Stretch Concord, a blade sign and a frontage sign. And we approve this application.
Second.
Sorry, just one more interjection. Usually you approve it on the condition that the drawing actually matches what was described, whereas currently the drawing shows painted letters and not what was described verbally.
Right. So we, with the caveat that we approve based on the new application with the raised letters and the carved letters on the signage.
Okay, a second.
I second.
Tim seconds. Okay, Walter?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Henry?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So I think that the application is approved. So thank you very much and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
All right, so now we're going to talk about the town of Concord, Walden Street and Main Street to perform various intersection improvements, including sidewalk extensions, bump outs, and shade trees at the intersection. We had a very good site visit this morning when we had the opportunity to ask many questions. One of the things that came to the forefront is the fact that we as HTC has limited purview on many of the design elements of this project. Specifically, we have no real purview on the surfaces of the roads, and probably we don't have purview in the walkways and things of that sort. So I'll ask Erin, which is always very competent in this setting, to give us a very quick explanation of what's going on, taking perspective that what we learned from the site visit this morning, and then we will go and discuss it.
Perfect, thank you. It's almost been a full 12 hours since I last saw some of you, so thanks for seeing me again today. So yeah, I think that our site visit went well this morning. Would you like me to share the plan just to show that with everybody?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, 1 second. All right, can everyone see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so I won't take you through the whole slideshow again, because I think you've all seen that about 12 times by now. So this is the intersection that we're discussing. This is the intersection of Main and Walden. The main things that we are proposing here is the 3 bump outs, which will, we think, significantly help with both the speeding through the area, which you can definitely see. We saw this morning, even with the roads being a little bit slick, we saw people moving through the intersection quite quickly. It will also make it much easier for people to be able to see vehicles that are coming, and for vehicles to be able to see them. So we are excited about that possibility of making this a much safer pedestrian intersection, as well as much safer for vehicles and bicyclists to be able to see pedestrians. Goes both ways. We are also looking at including 2 street trees, which will help sort of frame the area and bring back that historic look that we saw in the photos previously. We are looking at installing either a high curb or more of a sort of granite block, similar to what we have further down on in the war memorials down on Main Street. And that could either be, like I said, that taller curb or that sort of larger granite block, which people could sort of perch on. They could spend a moment while they're waiting to meet a friend, something like that. We want this to sort of be a pedestrian area and to show that we don't necessarily want vehicles to be ruling the road in this area, and that this really is an area where people should feel comfortable walking around. Another thing that we have added is this line to help guide people, so that if you've ever watched, especially during the tourism season, people come down Main Street this way and they sometimes end up in the left turn lane before they realize where they are and have to overcorrect. So we're trying to help with that, because this is sort of an awkward intersection, as we all know, by trying to help guide people through that intersection. One of the things I think was really key to see during the site walk today was that this looks much more severe on paper than it does in person. And I hope that everyone agrees with that, especially since I think that one of the commission members was looking at how if you're walking this way, you can essentially walk right across, which is, I think, very helpful. And I think that those are sort of the main points I want to make. We are also adding, so these are going to be sort of extra large crosswalks to allow for us to add in stormwater management in the crosswalks to help with any water that comes across, as it does right now, as well as adding in additional stormwater management in front of this sort of larger granite piece and within the sort of pocket park area, if you will. If there's anything else you want me to cover, or I can ask Joe Cormier, who is from our engineering department, is here as well. I don't know if he has anything else he wants to add.
Well, maybe Joe, if I may interject, if you can mention some of the limitations that we discussed this morning. I think it's important from the perspective of the interested public to learn why the crosswalk across Walden Street is in the location that it is, and so forth. And if you want to add some of those comments, because that will put the design decisions in perspective.
Absolutely. So right about here, there is a large grate, which is for CMLP. It has both electrics, it has broadband access. It is the access point to a large vault, which is underneath the road right about here. While I don't have the exact dimensions of it on here, it forces where we are able to put this bump out. So while we might have wanted to sort of round it off a little bit more, we can't have it going over the vaults, because that causes some major concerns with the ability to use the vault in the future. And the vault would be an extremely expensive thing to move. So it's essentially, it's staying where it is. So we had to design around that. So we made it as clear of a path as we could with the that sort of concern that we have there. There's also issues with ADA compliance. There is a step here, and if you've ever walked along Main Street, you know that the grade along the sidewalk here is quite steep. So what we're trying to do right here is correct for that so that we can help with this ADA accessibility and make it ADA compliant. So we don't want there to be any issues with the step that is right at what is now Graham's. And so instead we have made it so that this right here is a flat patch that people that are in a wheelchair or have some sort of mobility device can be on a flat surface. And that we also have to have that right before you reach this tactile warning pad. I don't know if Joe wants to add anything else that I might have missed right there.
No, I think you covered most of it, Aaron. The one thing I do want to add is we did look into incorporating this vault cover into the bump out, but we decided that would cause more conflict with ADA accessibility. So I think the way we have it here is the best solution as far as accessibility goes.
I will also mention that after the discussion earlier today, we did look at seeing if there's any way we can make sure that this is sort of as low profile as possible, just to make sure that we don't have any. I know there were some concerns over if people expect there to be more of a slope after the sidewalk. So if they step off the sidewalk, so we're going to see if we can make that sort of low profile to help. So it'll sort of slope down similar to it does at the edges right here. We're going to see if that's a possibility.
Thanks very much, Erin. I'm going to ask the members of the commission for comments, and I'm going to start with Tim.
Sorry, I'm muted. Yeah, I would agree. I understand the ADA and the sloping now that Joe and Aaron presented. Those are very difficult grades they're dealing with, and I, having dealt with all that stuff myself many times, I know how pinched it is, and you're just dealing with fixed slopes that are required. So you get to where you are, you start where you need to be, and you get where you are. So I wish that crosswalk running east-west was straighter, but I also agree with Aaron's comment that when you go out there, it's not quite as harsh as it looks in plan. As much as I'd like to have that straighter. I think this is a detailed comment, which I had raised last time, is there's a lot going on the north side, the tree grates, the raised walks, the raised curbs, and the raised curbs at the ends of the parallel parking. And I still have it. This is detailed. It's kind of it's more of a, there's obviously functional issues, but I'm just commenting on visual, just the layout. Those little corners at the ends of parallel parking, I just wonder whether it'd be better if it was just concrete and sidewalk, not unlike the South Islands. There's a lot of raised curbs that are tripping hazards, and I think it's visually just a bit cluttered. So that's I'm just concerned about the clutter of the north side. But that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tim. Henry.
I'm from a Historic District Commission point of view, I am interested that this is it's an affirmation of the pedestrian heart of Concord Center. And I think, if anything, removing parking and framing a view of the 1830 bank is an excellent thing. I think that the two former pharmacies, the Friends block where Snow Pharmacy was, and the Richardson block, and the 1897 bank, which is now Bank of America, all of those are in a way being reinforced by this this attempt to make it a safer place to be. So I applaud the scheme overall. I think the introduction of real trees, and by that I mean not token little flowering trees, but trees that will have some real presence, as they had in the beginnings of the 20th century should be a real addition, and may start to inform the way the street develops in the next century. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Henry. Catherine.
I think we have looked at this project over many months, and there's been some, very pointed and thoughtful work done here. And I think we've collectively arrived at some very good solutions. So I think it's very good. I have no further comments.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Dennis.
I was not able to make the site visit this morning. Sorry about that, but I liked hearing what people had to say about their thoughts after visiting the site. I didn't have a lot of problems with this early on because I mainly knew how many boards this went through to get to where it is and how little control we had over it. So with the additional comments, which I think are very good from my fellow members, I have no problems with where this is going at this point.
Thanks very much, Dennis. Walter.
I didn't expect to be in this position, but I have a lot more problems with this at the end of the day than I did at the beginning of the day. Some driven by standing in the snow this morning and realizing how the solutions to drainage seem to be at the mercy of funding. I mean, that's always the case in a lot of things. But I'm very concerned about the draining on the north side of things here. I'm also wondering why the walkways for pedestrians are actually such a small part of the overall picture here. And wondering, I'm new to the process, obviously, but I'm wondering if that was something that had been discussed at some point in the past. Even as I look at this, has it been considered to move those walkways farther on Main Street in each direction out, and bring the one down on Walden farther down Walden? So essentially the crosswalks, say, framed the outside of that gray area. That would avoid the problem with the vault, for example. As I look at it staring now, I'm concerned about cars making the adjustment. I'm not sure a line through the middle of the street, especially in the conditions weather-wise, triggered again by today's experience, that would make it most difficult to read that line, but also be the same conditions where it'd be most important to understand that line was there. The idea of removing parking here in general, I think, is an excellent one. Instead of having the trees where they are, perhaps a couple of those parking spaces winged on either side of the north side should be dedicated to planting trees. Put 4 trees in there, skip the 2 in the center, which would probably help avoid a more savage drainage problem right there, depending on the flow up and down the street, I guess. And the other major thing is, I'm not sure if you've all read Mr. Smith, Lowell Smith's letter that was included in documentation, but he has some concerns that I have not heard expressed anywhere here that have sobered me just a little bit about some of this. And then, because this is my nature, here's sort of a crazy thing. In his letter, he mentions that in the 1950s, there was a police officer in the center directing traffic here. I did a quick Google, and this is perhaps for everybody's amusement and not to be taken as seriously as maybe it could be. According to Google, which we can trust as far as we can, $23.86 an hour is the average pay for an officer, police officer in Concord, which by my calculation means that if a police officer were on duty 12 hours of the day, say from 7 to 7, there would be $104,506.80 a year over the course of 10 years. That's just about $1 million over the course of 20 years, which is maybe the projection for this project. It's about a $2 million investment in having a live police officer there directing traffic. So personally, I don't feel at all ready to give approval to this the way that it is. There are still quite a few unanswered questions from me, a number of them triggered by the site visit this morning. There's the mouthful for you.
Thanks very much, Walter. My impression about this project is that this is not by far a perfect solution, and that there are many options that could improve the design. On the other hand, I think that this is a matter of being pragmatic, and I believe that albeit it's not perfect, it's an improvement of what it is. And most of all, it's an intervention that leaves the option of further modifications, which I am almost certain that will be required. And one of those is the widening of the walkways. I find very compelling the idea of removing parking spaces and putting more trees, etc. But the current design as it stands doesn't preclude any of those things from happening in the future. I also concerned on physical and engineering matters, which is something that I will willfully ignore because it's not cannot be anything part of our purview. But I hope that the engineering department will address issues of drainage and water accumulation and so forth. So those are my comments. What about public comments? So it seems that there are no public comments. Rather surprised. So I will ask for a motion that we approve this application, that we approve with conditions, that we continue the application, or that we deny the application. I think there's a designated heater, Catherine.
Perhaps Henry has some thoughts.
To make the motion?
Yes.
I would move that we approve the planned changes at Walden Street and Main Street as they are put forward, with the condition that they come back with the actual tree species that will be there, and confirmation of whether there's going to be a high curb or a granite bench. And that would be the condition.
Okay, that's the motion. I need a second.
I second the motion.
Okay, so I'm gonna go alphabetically. Walter, you can vote yes or no.
Sorry, can I just interject one more time?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I know with other applicants, when there are changes, you ask them to either come back or you can build right into the certificate of appropriateness that they could come back and have the changes be approved administratively rather than go through the whole process of a full public hearing again. So I would just suggest that maybe that would also be a part of the motion.
I think that.
If you understand what I'm saying.
Well, we're referring to the change to the material changes from Henry, correct?
Well, if the project evolves and there's additional drainage and changes.
Well, certainly my comments were not intended to assume that the project is incomplete. I think that my comments were meant to say that even if we approve the application, that application can be that site can be further modified, and a new application can be made for whatever interventions are appropriate. But I don't think that the purpose of my comments is to say that we're not in a one-way street, and that we still have the opportunity in the future to make the site better. So I don't believe that it's necessary to incorporate those observations in the motion.
Okay, so you would want them to come, just for clarification, you would want them to come back for a full public hearing if there were changes from the proposed design?
Absolutely. All right, so we agree on the motion then. And did I hear second? I don't remember.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. So I was asking Walter.
I believe that I understand, Luis, what you are saying, and taking that into consideration when with my, this sounds like a signing statement by a president, with my understanding that changes would be looked at again and understanding the limits of our purview, I say aye.
Thank you, Walter. Catherine.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Tim.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So congratulations, Erin and Joe. At least you don't have to see us for even a whole month, you know.
Thank you. Well, you're if you're not sick of me yet, you will be soon, I'm sure.
I'm sure our paths will meet again.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So I want to go through other business as quickly as possible. We have a certificate amendment of 49 Liberty Street. I will give a little bit of background, and maybe Anne will make a better explanation. But we approved this application, and we, in the approval, we gave some leeway to changing certain design elements. And that's what I think it's being done right now. So am I correct in saying that, Anne?
Yes, that's right. You had asked for them to consider changes to the breezeway, and so they did make those changes, and this is really just a presentation of those changes.
Okay. Can we review the changes so the commission can know what they are?
Do you want me to speak?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
Jennifer, I'm
Jen,
sorry.
Okay.
I
I'm Jen Hart, the architect working with the Hewitts on 49 Liberty. And we have reduced the glass on the mudroom hall there. That's sort of a secondary entry set way back from the main front of the house with a pair of casements on either side of a single door. And we made a few minor changes. I don't know how much you want us to kind of run by you, but we've these are actually things that the Hewitts decided they'd like to keep. Before, we had talked about taking away the fan shutter on the half-round window and removing shutters on either side of the bay. They now have decided they like those and would like to keep those intact. And the other minor change is on the west elevation. And that is, we added 2 small windows. This is on the north. So the north side we don't think is visible from a public way, but we just thought we'd show you anyway. Added 2 small windows in the bathroom and the closet, and got rid of side lights at a kitchen door there. So that on that gable end. And then on the west elevation, we had 4 windows, and we now have 3 windows in the kitchen. So those are our changes, and we don't anticipate more changes. So we don't think this is now we're going to add or take away another window. The window order has been, it's underway, barring any problems here from the committee. We also brought a sample in, Anne, for the metal roofing that we'd like to use. We don't have pricing back on it yet, so we're hoping for a little bit of leeway here. I brought that in and sent images to, there we go, okay. So in the ideal world, we'd be using zinc coated copper to the right. We've been told it's quite a bit more than raw copper, so we're waiting for pricing, but if we could get potential okay on one, either or, that would be great. I would like to hear, and so the places that that roofing would be, it's on the front porch, the bay roofs, which are mostly shallow pitch roofs, and on the connector link roof, and on the west porch roof. So it's quite a few places, but all with a low pitch.
Okay, so are they basically all the changes that you are proposing?
We had been approved on the metal roofing, and we had talked about something that looked like a lead coated copper. They don't do lead coated copper. Zinc coated is the closest. And just wanted to show you the samples that we're looking at right now.
So which is the sample that were approved? The one
Oh,
that
I'm just
looks
wondering
like
if you can
copper?
approve both of them, either or. That's the on those two samples, if
But-
that's possible.
Wasn't an approval of that material beforehand?
Of the zinc coated, yes, but you want to see a sample of it, I believe that you'd asked to see a sample. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm just kind of being maybe overly diligent, but I wanted to know if the raw copper was also an option if we get some numbers back and decided to go that route. And the raw copper, knowing that that would patina pretty quickly.
Okay, I think that we all commissioners should comment on this. So I'll ask Tim to start.
I'm pretty new to this project. I know the house certainly, but I certainly don't have any comments on the windows. I looked at what was there before. The only comment I have on the roofing is the copper will patina to brown. It's not going to patina to green anytime quick.
Right, right.
So it's going to be a chocolatey brown color for years and years and years. I'm just making that comment. And copper is a lovely material. Zinc coated copper is also a lovely material. So either one is a high quality, very high quality roofing material. But I'm just commenting on the color implications of that Nancy, that Jennifer, I'm sure, is well aware of.
Yes, I'm all for the zinc coated. That's kind of I'm rooting for it, and we've been trying to find something that would look like it and be the gray. I mean, it might come down to what if we do some in zinc and then we go back to asphalt roof on the mudroom link or something. So I guess I also want to know, when do I come back to see you if we have a change like that, just as an example?
Well, if it's a change from what it was initially approved or what we approved tonight, then you have to come back.
Okay, that's fine. I like you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Henry.
I think it would be good if they could do zinc coated copper.
Okay.
I have no problem with the windows. The shutters I think that there are 3 windows, and they're existing shutters that they would like to keep that don't cover the window.
Yes, odd. I know that. They don't cover, it's a bay window even. It's an odd window, odd shutters. And they are existing. I wish I came to you with telling you when the shutters were put there. I'm not sure.
But I think the fact that they're already
They
there,
might fold out. I should know that too. I apologize. I should know more about those shutters.
the fact that they're already there kind of puts them out of the discussion, though, doesn't it?
Well, not necessarily. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
I have that reservation about that facade. Otherwise, I thought these were all very reasonable changes.
Thank you very much, Henry. Catherine.
Sorry. I too think that the proposed changes to some of the windows and the retention of the shutters are all good. I have no objections whatsoever. And I too think the zinc covered copper would be lovely, but I do understand that there might be limitations with being able to do that. So I would have no problem with the raw copper as well.
Thanks very much, Catherine. Dennis.
I too agree that the zinc covered copper is preferable. I too have problems with the shutters, but my understanding is what Henry was asking, that, and maybe Anne could clarify, if those shutters already exist, we cannot disapprove of them. Is that true, Anne?
I think that's correct.
Okay.
But I see the point, because they would not, I mean, at least based on the drawings, they wouldn't cover the bay. So it seems
Right, I think they're
out of range.
inappropriate. If they were bifold, so even if they
Right.
were skinny, but you saw the thickness of them, so you knew that they, which often happen, they fold out and cover the window, then I wouldn't have a problem. But just two skinny shutters on either side, I think are inappropriate, particularly when the bay next door doesn't have any shutters on it. So, but if we can't have any, I can give my opinion, but if we have no strength in making a change there, I guess that's a moot point.
I'm happy to bring the opinion to the client and see what comes of that. So
Thank you.
I understand.
Other than that, I have no problems with it.
Thanks very much, Dennis. Walter.
I'll add my vote to expressing the opinion that if it's a flip of the coin for the shutters, I think they are slightly inappropriate, but hardly horrible. I'm fine with the windows, and I have personal experience with uncoated copper on a very prominent, very easily seen building, and it does take a little while for the reflected beaconness of it to disappear. So that if the zinc is available, it's certainly a better way to go. The copper, I think, I know will tame as well fairly quickly, but it's probably a couple of years of it being rather bright. If it is appropriate in the setting, then I have no problem.
Thanks very much, Walter. I will echo all the comments of my fellow commissioners, including my the preference for zinc copper and the relevance of the shutters. And I hope that the architect can convince the client that if form does not follow function, then it must not be there. Otherwise, some famous architects may come over and haunt you in the middle of the night.
You can see me smiling.
Give you
You
nightmares.
can't see me, but I'm smiling. I totally get it.
So I don't think this is an administrative decision, so I don't think we need public comments. But I will ask for a motion and a second to approve the changes presented for 49 Liberty Street. Somebody wants to move?
Sure, I move to approve the application for changes to windows and shutters for the project at 49 Liberty Street.
A second?
A second.
Okay, Walter.
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Henry?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
You have a mission to bring us the good tidings that there are no more shutters there.
Okay. Well, I'm working on it right now. I'm about to text. Okay, thank you.
All right. The next issue, it's the Historical Preservation Awards nominee. Every 3 years, the Historic Commission gives the Preservation Award, and they ask commissions in town to make nominations for this award. In the past, we nominated what was at the time the Hawthorne Inn, and I don't remember which other nominations we had. We had a very nice restoration that was on Monument Street. And this year, we have been discussing what could be the potential recipient or the potential nominee from our commission. And we proposed that that our nominee would be the Concord Academy. They have finished 3 projects during the time necessary to be considered for this particular award. So technically, it's within the time frame. But one of the impetus of making them our nominee is to recognize the very cooperative and constructive relationship that both the Academy and the architects that they have had with the Historic District Commission to maintain one of the most iconic parts of Concord, which is Main Street, exactly in that segment, to keep it as a very nice historic reference. So this would be voted by all commissioners in favor of nominating the Concord Academy for the Historic Preservation Award. Any comments? Okay, if there are no comments, I'll ask the commissioners for a vote against or in favor. Tim?
Well, I'm trusting everything you say, Luis, so I say yes.
Don't be so confident on anything I say. They did not give me a check, don't worry. Henry?
I think it's richly deserved. It's a good idea to put them forward.
Catherine?
Yes, I echo the votes for the nomination of
Okay,
Concord
then
Academy.
sorry.
I'm in favor. Sounds great.
Good. Walter?
I'm on board.
And I'm an I as well. So the Concord Academy will be our nominee for the Historic Preservation Awards. Now, I want to very quickly go through the issue of the rules and regulations. I think that most of us are familiar with the issue that we're trying to address. What I'm asking right now is that after having made available several versions of the changes that we want to make, and all of them are essentially the same, the most recent version that it's in the website shows changes to particular articles of the rules and regulations, correction of the guidelines, which is what we can change. And the previous iteration, which I believe that was sent to each one of the commissioners, it's a little more a little different freestyle and shows the rule of 5, the rule of 10, the rule of 2. That is just to understand what are the changes that we want to make. In essence, we want to make commissioners be able to serve for 5 years as associates and 5 years as full members, if they wish. We want commissioners that have served for a period or several periods in the commission to be able to return to the commission as commissioners after a 2-year waiting period. And if somebody is promoted to full membership before they finish their associate membership, we want to make an effort to welcome them again as associate members until they complete 5 years of service in the commission. So what I'm asking tonight is that the commission approve that I approach the nominating entities, i.e. the Concord Public Library, the Concord Museum, the Commission for Natural Resources, the Planning Board, and the Select Board, and present these changes and obtain feedback from them. As an additional footnote, I will mention that I have been in deep conversations with our liaison, which is Henry Dane, and he has taken a constructive attitude towards these changes, and he has been focusing in assuring that from the standpoint of the legal requirements established by the enabling legislation and the other legal instruments that apply to the existence of the Historic District Commission, these changes are appropriate. So this is a new welcome development, and I expect that I will be able to give you some feedback on that in that sense. So what I'm asking again is that I approach these the nominating entities, and I will be more than happy to explain any particular issues related to these proposed changes.
I have a quick question, which is, is this structured to apply to current membership? I assume so.
We would hope so, because
because it's not explicitly mentioned anywhere in the revision, just something that occurred to me.
Yeah, we want to have a document that will have the essential elements of it, and when we put it back as articles and as numbered articles, then we want to incorporate all those issues. But some members of the nominating entities will be confronted with information that's going to be unfamiliar to them, so we don't want to add information that is not strictly necessary.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments?
I'll comment after my question, which is I think it's pretty wonderful, and obviously a lot of hard work here. So congratulations.
Very much. Dennis, you're on.
Yeah, nope. No comments. I agree with Walter. You put a lot of hard work into this, and I think it cleans up a lot of aspects of it that have been troubling, and so I think it's great.
Okay. All right, then if there are no more comments, I will ask for a vote of the commission for me to approach the nominating entities and discuss these changes and get their feedback. I will go alphabetically. Walter?
Yes.
Dennis?
Aye.
Catherine?
Aye.
Henry?
Aye.
Timothy?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. Well, thank you very much. And I will keep you posted about these discussions. Finally, I'll ask Ann Clifford to give us an update on the 615 Lowell Road litigation. I have nothing new to tell you from the select board or from any other official source. So I assume that Ann is the one that has the information. Is Ann here?
Sorry, I didn't
There she
be asking me. But yes, I've heard that the select board did approve, backing the HTC in the litigation. So that's been approved and that's official.
Which is wonderful. We thank you for that. It's about time. But there's no other news on whether they're going to move forward with the suit or not, or where they stand.
No, I think the decision was so recent, and they have I forget the number of days. I think 30 or 45 days in order to file an appeal, and we haven't heard yet on that front.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Well, and if there are no other issues to discuss, then I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Oh, we all want to stay here. Come on.
As a voting member, I can make a motion. I guess.
Anyone can make a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second.
I ask for a voice vote. Vote. Aye.
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 And vote for aye.
Okay. Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Luis.
And
Thank you, Luis.
have
Okay.
a good evening.
Good night, all.